It's much more than religious theater. It's farming humans for dollars. In the 5-hour conversation of November 2017, one of the things that Hyungjin remarked, or made remarks about, was my plan not to go to church for a while. If you remember, I told you Father shouted, "I did both of those things! No!" Right? So I really wasn't planning to come back to the church. But I thought that, I definitely had to I couldn't discard what Father had said. I couldn't discard even the intensity in what he had said. I didn't tell you about a Rima me and one of the guys in the filing cadre got way back in late August, early September. Because we were finding out that there was, it wasn't just Lourdes, it was more than Lourdes creating resistance. The growing intensity back then made us look for God's word on the matter. And my friend got a Rima from the Bible that I just couldn't unite with, even in a figurative sense. But it said that, it was one of those Old Testament, go down and don't leave any survivors, right? Which basically means that in my fight against Lourdes, to slay Lourdes with the apology that there are other people who should apologize and brought to account. And it wasn't just Lourdes. So we had gotten that Rima back in August. I resisted the idea that it was more than Lourdes that I was picking a fight with, other than the World Mission Department itself. I didn't think that it would be, I would be up against Jim and Richard and I kind of knew Doug, but I thought that was off to the side. I certainly didn't think, I couldn't figure out whether it was Cookchin at that time behind him. But basically, this Rima suggested that something is deeply wrong in the whole structure. So by November, that was the end of August. By November, when I was saying, yeah, I'm taking a break, and Father had said, I did both of those things. He had sacrificed his family. He left his family alone. He wasn't going to have me do those types of things again in the name of God's providence. It was unnecessary. So I'm talking to Hyungjin and Yana, and so Hyungjin says, oh, when you come back, we can make it all like, oh, look, everybody, Jamal's back. And right there, I just saw this mind that plans, like an executive producer of an event, that plans like what the impact is going to be like. It was disturbing because, if these people really didn't like me, he was sure that by ginning up, oh, Jamal is back, that they would follow. I mean, he was so sure, so many months in advance, that whenever it was that I came back, he could make it work. So, anyway, I think you guys all know what that's about. And some of you are guilty with reciprocation. You're filthy. You're filthy with it. Because you give him the reality where he can write the narrative one way or the other. Of course, when I don't come back, he starts going, oh, Jamal was tempting me anyway. Right? So he can write either narrative, and you guys gobble it up. So it's more than just religious theater, because if that was just a matter of, putting me in an honored place, and, if that was just it, putting me in an honored place in your mind, or putting me in, a hated place, or a place of scorn in your mind, the believer, the people who sit in the church pews, if it was just that, and my reputation was the only thing that gets messed with in your head, it's still a violation. It's still, lack of transparency. It's the man behind the curtain, like the fake Wizard of Oz. And when you find out that Hyungjin is capable of thinking of his own members in such a way, the bad thing is, and this is with everything that true children do, you wonder if true parents had known about this type of tactic all along. I mean, I don't, but it would make one wonder if the entire church for 50 years had been nothing more to Reverend Moon than religious theater. And the second issue is human farming. How do you cash in? How do you pick the fruit off of the humans? by tithing, okay, by setting monetary donation goals, okay, for various projects, right? That's how you farm the human. That's how you pick the fruit off the humans that you're farming. Now, why did this come up? This came up because they had done this rod of iron thing, okay? They started this rod of iron thing in January. It was an idea in late December 2017. And now, by February 18th, there was such a push that you have to bring an AR-15 so that you can get one of the levels, the higher level, in the blessing. Now, people who don't know the principle don't question that there are no levels in the perfection stage, in the direct dominion. And so it wasn't a completion stage blessing. It was a perfection of the perfection stage blessing. That's what perfection stage blessing means. It doesn't mean formation stage of the perfection stage. Perfection stage means the final stage, and the final stage is not the formation stage of the completion stage. So the Father was talking about the perfection level blessing. Okay, so that perfection level blessing is something to talk about. It is what it is. It is a great concept. It is total oneness with God and all the attributes that go along with that. But this, what they were planning, was none of that. And central to their plan is some narrative wherein the believer thinks that he has to own this gun. So he has to procure this gun. So Car Arms generously offers these guns to people at, a fair price, $700. I got my AR for like a little over $600, So what if you couldn't buy a gun legally because you were Japanese? Well, you could get a voucher. And the voucher, which is a piece of paper, costs $700. So it was like they were printing money. I mean, you went and bought a $700 piece of paper on the hope that your country would turn around and you'd be able to buy it. Or, hey, the only place I'm able to actually become a more full-fledged citizen is to come to America, where I have to live under the hill of Cookchin's house that Hyungjin lives in. Okay, anyway, me and my friends, we were like saying, damn, this is just shameless, because it had to be about, I don't know, one estimate was $700,000 windfall for Car Arms. $700,000 just in that one event. I don't know how much it actually was, I don't know how many families bought how many guns. But hey, you sure did get shouted down. And if Hyungjin's shouting at you to get back to a place where he's not shouting anymore is very meaningful to a true believer. So using people's mind to be true believers and to remain in good standing, right? Boy, you can be farmed for almost anything. So what's next? When they start running out of money, they'll say you need another accoutrement because a revelation came. The revelation came, so you need another accoutrement, and that accoutrement has to be either something sold by Car Arms or something sold by another company that they have inroads with. They're going to get a kickback. Or, when Hak Jahan made the 3 books, I suppose after seeing how much people coughed up from the Chung Sung Gil, she was like, hey, we need some more money. Let's create a narrative wherein these people need these other books. So, I mean, can you imagine how much money came flowing in? So, you tell me, is True Family spoiled on the donations? When the church disappears because everybody truly goes the tribal Messiah route, it's not just the church leaders because they're positionistic and they won't have a high place to sit if there are no underlings anymore. But people who financially live off of the pyramid, and true children are them too. So the temptation to maintain the pyramid, even when providence doesn't support the pyramid, is there. I'm sure to some degree. I mean, don't you have a body? Doesn't your body want to eat? Doesn't your body want to avoid work? Okay, doesn't your body want to avoid work? Doesn't your body want to eat? Don't you want to survive? Don't you want your kids to survive? Sure. Therefore, the place you've been getting money, it's obvious, right? The place you've been getting money, you want it to remain, right? So it's not just religious theater. It's not just like, oh, how are we going to, what kind of narrative are we going to spin to get people to fly all the way out here with all their donations, to fly all the way halfway around the world to come to Pennsylvania again. Now, I didn't tell you this, but back in Maine in October, couple of us had a conversation a long conversation with Mrs. Claus. And Mrs. Claus was talking about, why do you guys get online and say this and say that? And this is how I understood the deeper nature of the gag order. Because it's advertising. What we say online is a form of advertising one way or the other. And so she didn't want any negative reviews out there. It's kind of like the thing with Rotten Tomatoes. They don't want conservative art pieces reviewed highly, and they don't want leftist, far left art pieces reviewed negatively. So the critic score and the audience score is sometimes very different. And so they were trying to doctor up the critics' score of what they were doing. And how did she describe what they were doing? She said that, don't you know that this is an event-driven church? So, in other words, this church is not driven by thousands of people coming every Sunday to one location to hear the word. This church is driven by thousands of people coming from all over the globe for critical events. So the more events that they can cause people to feel to leave their home and come to Pennsylvania for, the more money they can make. Also, the more hype they can make, because people usually enjoy escapism. Getting away from their location with friends usually produces all this nostalgic imagery in your mind later, and it's escapism. So by being on the steering wheel with creating escapism and we're global, we're wanted at that location. My wife's dream about the photo op. So in that sense, they're able to inspire people to put down cash, and they do it happily. And guess what? If you're in that kind of marriage relationship, I'm totally fine. But what about your tribe? What about your fourth atomism? What about your relationship with conscience? What about your relationship with the real principle? Okay? If in the relationship they're not taking care to feed you a real principle because you don't want to read the principle yourself, you don't trust your own realizations when you read the principle, when you read the Chung Sung Young, when you read the 8 textbooks, you read it, but you don't trust what you think. You don't really question the book and ask it to make sense. You don't reread until it starts to make sense, because that could get you in trouble. What if you come up with something that runs cross with what your so-called able figure said, in this case Hyungjin? Then you'd be in a lot of trouble. So you are in a state where you don't take your own reading so seriously. In order for them to farm you, to have your behind where they want it, plus your wallet where they want it, you have to actually not take the word as seriously. Like me getting at Rima about going after all of them. I didn't want to deal with that in August. So that causes me to be late. I'm late to the party. I mean, could you imagine if I just came out like I am now, like going after all of them? I was told by God to, realize that they're all hostile towards me. I should have come out first round. I should have come out, because look, they even destroyed. I suspended a more vigorous fight because I was in a matching. I mean, they even destroyed that anyway. Okay, so I mean, you might as well go with your true self, because I'm not sure that I'm pretty sure that they set the condition of not being concerned about the citizen. Conditions matter, right? So when God says that, when Jesus said that Moses lifted up the serpent, and the principle clarifies that foreshadows the crucifixion, I mean, that means that conditions matter down the road. They already set the condition in the very first possible court case. They already set the condition of disrespecting the rights of the citizen. Okay? And anyway, getting to the February 28th. So now you got this gun. My friends said that was like a golden calf. Okay? The fact that the gun has to be paraded ceremonially into, I mean, when was anything other than true parents paraded ceremonially into the blessing? Such that if you don't have that thing, you don't have the full blessing, So that idea was kind of nutty, and we made them dial that back. I don't want to say we made them, but we poked so many holes through it that he starts talking about how it's an accoutrement. It's an accoutrement. So basically an accoutrement would be like telling you, I guess, how to dress. According to what, though? According to this idea that you have to be concerned about protecting yourself physically. And this is what I want to get to about the whole rod of iron. The rod of iron is the word. Everything is created through the word. Okay? So what's really going on is the word gets in the believer upon as he matures. So because he becomes the word, and this is what Father was telling Hyunjin, you find a deeper meaning in the word, and you find what the word ultimately says about you. It testifies to you. And then your attitude towards yourself hardens. Not hardens in some negative way, but it becomes solidified. You become a man of conviction. Because you realize that you're not to be played with as the center of, and this is what the principle says, as the center of the cosmos, Lord of creation. This is actually a very serious position as gardener or manager, or you're like the love faucet watering the entire creation. Okay, you're in charge of the sex organs. The sex organs are the human maker, the human factory. Anyway, you find deeper meaning in the word, and then you become a manifestation of the word. That's why it says that Christ himself, in some sense, is the rod of iron, because he's the manifestation of the word. Now, some people, when they're under assault, don't pull the trigger, and they let themselves perish. And that's because they can't figure out whether they're in the right or in the wrong, and they're not willing to be wrong. So they let the assailant have his way. Too long. They missed the impulse where they could have done something about it. So it's more important to have a grasp of the rod of iron. Now tell me, when you're not in a position to own your own interpretation of the truth, okay, but through the truth you would gain the conviction that you are worth saving, tell me, how is it that having the gun is giving you more of a spine than the truth itself? The truth is supposed to give you balls. The truth is supposed to give you a spine. So how is this substitute rod of iron doing that for you? What kind of balls, what kind of spine? Is it might based on internal conviction that God gets behind? Or is it might through a gun? In that sense, you're expecting the gun to do for you what the word should be doing for you. It's the word that protects you. It is the word that protects you. I've been having some experiences where, I've had to tell some difficult people who I am. I'm like who I truly am. And then the whole spirit world mobilizes against that person. So how are you? You cannot say that you are who you are when it's not based in the word, because the entire cosmos is looking at the word, including God, including angels that you can't mess with, the infallible ones. They do things according to the word. So if you were going to be protected because you're a manifestation of the word, right? By spirit world. I met a guy, I won't say his name, but he was a security guard for True Father. And I asked him, did Father ever need guns to protect him? And he said, oh no. Because he had this experience where Father was coming up in the elevator in Manhattan Center. It wasn't the public elevator. And he was in the receiving chamber where the elevator doors open. And he had rushed there because by walkie-talkie they assigned him to that location. But as he walked in the room, Father was already coming out the elevator door. And so as soon as Father saw him, what happened to the man is his spirit was cast down to the street level. And he was on 8th Avenue, or was it 34th Street? He was down on the street watching people walk by. And as soon as Father walked through that receiving area, he came back to his body. So he had zero exchange with the Messiah at that time, because the Messiah or the spirit world cast his consciousness to some other place. Okay, so I mean that's because Father's a manifestation of the word. His entire existence is ordained or foreknown. He is a thing written into existence before the first piece of dust formed. Okay, before light formed out in space. Okay, so. He really matters. And for you to attain the same status, this is the concept of fourth Adam, you have to do so through the word, which is why Father said you can register through the word. So much more power and much more protection is afforded to you through the word, okay, the true rod of iron. But the word itself is problematic for people who are farming other humans, because if you're farming humans and they find out that they don't need to be farmed by you, then the truth itself becomes problematic. So, I wonder why they replaced... maybe they didn't know that they were doing that, because the set of proclivities that they're operating under are satanic. And maybe Satan knows that by coming up with the rationale that the gun is the rod of iron. Yeah. So anyway, they started to say, oh, it's the internal rod of iron. This is after I had a phone call from Gideon. So Gideon calls me, or he contacts me, and he wants to give a presentation to the young people about the internal rod of iron, right? And I'm like, no, I'm not gonna feed you any truth, because I can't trust that you won't bend it more effectively, in your lust to create the gun lore. Here's the fact of the relationship. If you don't know that, if you haven't had a fourth Adam realization where you are the manifestation of what the word promises, that's the nature of fourth Adam, then you walking around with a gun having the wrong relationship with the gun in the first place. In other words, it's internal first, then external. You have to have the nerve to protect yourself in some situations. That's why you need to know your fourth Adam. Because without the conviction and the nerve to protect yourself, you think that you should be assaulted. In some cases, you think you should be assaulted. There are reasons why rapists don't blow the whistle on their victims. There are reasons why the consenting rapists don't blow the whistle on Harvey Weinstein and this kind of thing. There are reasons why people assaulted by the Illuminati don't tell on the people coming to kill them, because they just don't have an internal high ground. And especially if their internal high ground is stripped by some seedy, nasty ceremony that the Illuminati had them go through, right? Where they had sex with somebody that turns out to be underage or whatever. So anyway, the rod of iron has told me, as it should eventually tell you in your mind. You're the one that has to hold on to it. You're the one that so much has to hold on to the sense of who you are for you to grow to the perfection stage. You have to pass the three temptations. You're the one who has to face the three temptations. You're the one that has to show the cosmos that you will not trade your identity for anything. And the evil world will be putting up, to tempt you, very real, what looks like benefits. Okay, very, very alluring, attractive, things that benefit the ego, benefit the body, or benefit your social standing. Okay, those are the three temptations. And benefit your power in the world that's already been set up. So, you look at the world of evil, and the gun represents power in the world that's already been set up. And this is the point that Dan Hutcherson is making. The gun presupposes evil. The gun itself presupposes evil. Like he makes the point. The condom, if you hand out a condom as at an event at a school for children trust what the adults had set up for them. So if you you hand out a condom, then these trusted adults are telling the kid, oh, we don't really expect abstinence from you. We kind of know you can't really do that, so here's this condom. So in a sense, this is their vote of disbelief in humanity. They don't think that humanity has a way to understand Father and create the world of peace, where we bend our swords into plow implements, right? So they don't believe that. They believe that we will always be dealing with evil. And so it has just become a rod of iron kingdom. Has become the thing where we are worth protecting ourselves. But it's not that we are... Listen, if you can't protect yourself, if you can't know that you shouldn't be messed with, you'll never be where Jesus was. And we can, because it's the era of fourth Adam. Because it's the era of fourth Adam, there's a position, there's a potential me that was written in the book. And I had to assume that. Otherwise, Father would have no true children. He would have no children. Even the physical true children have to become true children in the sense that they find their place in the divine principle, that they have a personal realization. Then at that point, you stop empowering the really violent ones. You stop empowering them. Okay, if we're continuing to empower the spirit of violence, then how are we being good caretakers? I mean, how are we even being, in a spiritual sense, we're not lord over the spirit world. If you can have a situation where the first citizen didn't feel like he was free of molestation even in the court, and you do nothing about it, how are you winning in the spirit world? The spirit world cares about the conditions you set. Okay, so how is it that you're telling the spirit world that you're ready to defend what should be defended when you don't actually do that internally? And there's this entire thing in the sanctuary regime where if it's internal, it doesn't matter. So all the people are Jamalites because they acknowledge Chanoguk exists. But Chanoguk must exist in the hearts of the people for it to exist outwardly first. That means people must become a manifestation. People must have a no space, no air relationship with the truth and what the truth says about them in order to go beyond the past of liberated authority. These are Father's words about you must go beyond the past of liberated authority. Father did everything. The only thing left to do is for you to register. Okay, so if Father said the only thing for us to do is for us to register, did Father say the only thing left for us to do is to start carrying around guns? No. This is them playing games with your faith. You have faith in people. You don't have faith in the word. You have to start. If you have to start at a kinder, if you've been following Abel for 40 years, worst case scenario, and you haven't had your own mind really relate, you haven't told your own mind that it must have a realistic grasp of the truth or else. If you've never done that and you've got to start at a kindergarten level with the word, then do it. Then do it. Because people are playing games with the truth. They're adding to the truth. And they're adding to what you feel is a set of imperatives that you feel is so important. And they don't go anywhere except to feeding religious theater and farming you for dollars. So if you don't have the truth, you can't free yourself from that. It's some form of slavery, the fear of not being at the next event, and the fact that the perks start dropping off. Okay, Young Jim doesn't know you by your first name anymore, and all this kind of stuff starts dropping off because you weren't at the event. And okay, you weren't at 3 events in a row. Okay, all right, I haven't been there for 2 years. What happens to me? What the fuck did I do to him? Right? So he starts, they go low. He starts talking about my wife and how I was a tempter. So I remember Young Jin saying one time, if you leave, you can never come back. And I got the distinct feeling like, no, that's not truth. That's how you are when you're resentful about people not supporting you, you know? And anyway, that's all I got to say right now. I think that the whole focus on Rod of Iron is a distraction from the real Rod of Iron.